As dawn breaks on January 3rd, 2023 on Capitol Hill, tensions are high, majorities are slim, there's been only one speaker designated so far, and George Santos is there too for some reason. This is day one of the 118th Congress.
I know words, I have the best words, but there's no better word than stupid.
And what a whirlwind it's been. It's only been not even a year at this point. It's December 4th, 2023, and we're talking about January 2023. But my name is Joey Sherbo, and I will be guiding you as the host of this podcast episode, this one-off podcast episode that I'm doing. I will be guiding you through the tumultuous speakership and downfall of Kevin McCarthy. And so much has happened. It's hard to keep track. But I've been trying. And I was there on January 3rd, 2023. Well, I wasn't there, but I was in my bedroom watching a live stream of CNN as the first speaker vote was going on. Well, that was interesting. I never even took notice of a speaker vote before. I thought those things were just sort of formalities that, the Democrats have a majority, so their nominee for speaker is going to be elected, Nancy Pelosi. Well, things were a little different this time around, as we're all painfully aware. Now, I remember before the 2022 midterm results came in, I remember everybody on the news, even if they were left-leaning or right-leaning, they all decided that, Republicans were going to give a good walloping to the Democrats and take control of the House and the Senate. And some estimates were that they were going to get 50 seats in the House. Now, flash forward a little bit to November 2022, and you have Democrats pick up a seat in the Senate, and you have Republicans win control of the House like they were forecasted to, but they only had about a 5-seat majority. So it's not what anybody was looking forward to on that Republican side, least of all Kevin McCarthy, who has spent his entire adult life and probably childhood life as well, yearning, begging to whatever God he believes in, that he one day pick up that gavel and, in his own words, slam Nancy Pelosi in the hand with it, whatever he said, something. He didn't do it, thankfully, but it's interesting that he would even say it. But that's besides the point. So he's going into this very weak. There's a very loud minority of his right flank that seem to despise his guts for some reason. I don't know why. He went down after January 6th and kissed Donald Trump's ring, so he should be on good terms with Matt Gaetz, or the Crazy Eights, led by Matt Gaetz, as Kevin McCarthy likes to call them these days, in his weird pseudo-retirement where he's still floating around the house but not in control of anything, but is just venting his frustrations to the public. Hard to keep track of everything that's going on. So now we're in the post-midterm world where everybody on the Republican side is angry and trying to point the finger at somebody. Now, they probably should be pointing the finger to Donald Trump because it's actually his doing of why they did so bad. But they don't want to do that. So some people decided they were going to point the finger to Kevin McCarthy and Ronna McDaniel at some point. But she tends to slip by without any repercussions, even though they keep getting bigger and bigger losses every election season. But again, that's besides the point. So we're going into this. Kevin McCarthy is the enemy of the far right. Very conspicuously not Donald Trump, though. He was pretty heavily in support of Kevin McCarthy's speakership bid this entire time, even though he said that he was trying to stay out of it. So now we're in December 2022, you have Matt Gaetz getting very vocal on Fox News about his views on Kevin McCarthy and how he doesn't deserve the job whatsoever. So there was this plan going around this time that Sean Hannity, no, it was Tucker Carlson, was going to host a speaker debate where Kevin McCarthy was going to have to go on live television and basically grovel for his job at Matt Gaetz and whoever else showed up to that weird interview or whatever it would have been. Now, unfortunately for us, but fortunately for Kevin McCarthy and everybody else, that weird little speaker town hall thing that's never been done before never happened. But it sure would have been interesting. And so now we're into January 3rd, and no one knows what's going to happen when Kevin McCarthy tries to get elected speaker. I think a lot of people thought that he would pull through, maybe, but then the first vote goes, and he loses very badly, loses a lot more support than I thought he was going to lose. Now, I know that I don't have any credentials in this regard, but I was trying to keep up with what people were saying against him in the Republican Party, and he definitely lost more than anybody thought he would. So now it's still the same day, and we were like, well, just try again. Then he lost the same amount of people, and then try again, and then he's losing people, and then try again. He's still losing. Now, at this point, we got Hakeem Jeffries on the Democratic side, who's been the lead vote getter in all of these other ballots that are going on here. He's been getting pretty much the whole 212 of the Democratic Party firmly in support of him. And Kevin McCarthy is struggling to get 200 at this point. So it's not looking good for him. And a lot of people, myself included, were thinking, wow, why doesn't he just, I mean, he's never going to get it, right? Like, just stop trying. But no. Our little Kevin persevered, and he got in there on the 15th ballot. And what a joyous celebration that was at 3 a.m. or wherever that happened. I was up for it. I watched him take that gavel and do that little weird tongue sticking out smile thing that he likes to do as he was up there swearing in the members-elect of Congress. Rest in peace to George Santos's career. But his way to the speakership was not without its concessions to the far right. He empowered them by giving them the power to introduce a motion to vacate the speaker's chair at any point, and needing only one member to do so, and make it a privilege motion so that the House would have to take it up within 2 days. Now, this motion to vacate hung over Kevin McCarthy's head his entire 9 months in the job. Now, every opportunity that these far-right members got to dangle this little tidbit over Kevin McCarthy's head, they used. Even when it looked like they were actually going to use it, they didn't, trying to hold out for more concessions on things that they wanted. But then finally, Kevin McCarthy did a grave sin. He decided to work with Democrats to get something passed. I know. It's hard to hear. Bipartisanship. Got him kicked out. And rightfully so. No, I'm just kidding. But the thing with that is that Kevin McCarthy he put on the floor the most conservative budget that's ever been on the House floor. And you know what those Republicans did? They voted against it. What else could he have given them? So then Kevin McCarthy decided to just put a clean CR on the floor, and it passed. It passed with more Democratic support than Republican, and then it passed the Senate, and then it was signed by President Biden. So So what was the plan of the far right Republicans that could have had everything that they wanted? They said it wasn't far enough, but isn't it a step? They actually got nothing in the end, but they got Kevin McCarthy out, which I think was the main goal of that. Because if it was all in the budget, then why didn't they pass the most conservative budget that they could have? Really begs the question there. Very interesting topic. And this all ties back into our class discussions in the political parties class, talking about how these little polarized minorities in both parties are getting a lot of power over the moderates in their party, but specifically on the Republican side. I know it's easier for the Democrats because they're not in the majority right now in the House, but they were completely unified in every single vote against, or for, I should say, for Hakeem Jeffries. Now that's something Kevin McCarthy wishes he could have had. Even in the end, he never had the full support of any of them. They most of them didn't vote for him. They voted present, so there would be enough to bring down the threshold enough to where he could get elected. But my favorite part of this whole fiasco of the speaker battle was that the Democrats were ready to save Kevin McCarthy. They were all going to vote present when they were going to do the vote to vacate. They were going to let it be a purely Republican matter and all vote present. So that, of course, the vote would pass because a majority of Republicans weren't going to support removing a sitting speaker. But then Kevin McCarthy goes on TV the weekend after the Democrats help him pass the continuing resolution, and he bashes the Democrats and talks about how they wanted to shut down the government and they were pulling fire alarms to shut down the government, and it was all they're doing. So then, and this is my favorite part, the Democratic conference played that video before the vote to vacate as a sort of fight song, a sort of prepping, a pregame for the vote to get them riled up to all vote to vacate. Now, what does all this political polarization and congressional gridlock have to do in the greater context of the American experiment? Well, in the past decade, there's been a weird trickle down, then trickle back up, top down, bottom up meanness injected into politics, and then name calling, and then polarization and inability to work with the other side. And I know it's cliche to say at this point, but I really am blaming Donald Trump as the catalyst for all that. Now, of course, people like Rush Limbaugh and those guys like him were all aiding in the demise of discourse in politics. But then you had this guy who really came from the bottom up in politics and then became the top, the leader of a whole political party, leader of millions of people, who just like is a bad guy. He's just awful. Now, we live in South Jersey. I know a lot of people in my family that have met Donald Trump and some that have worked for him as well in Atlantic City, and none of the stories are good, you know. Now, one of my favorites is my grandma worked at the Trump Castle and then the Trump Marina in Atlantic City decades ago, and Donald Trump would get on the loudspeaker and curse out Rosie O'Donnell in front of all the guests. I don't know, but it's good for him to do that in his own hotel with his name emblazoned in gold on the side of it. But yeah. So then from him at the top, then there was this trickle down effect to where everybody else was then emboldened to act like him and act out and not work with the other side and be difficult and be different for the sake of being different. And it's just been a mess. And then you see that's what happened in Congress this year. It hasn't even been a year. We're not even halfway through the 118th Congress. And we're already kicked out a speaker. Never been done before in history. Kicked out a speaker. And it took him a while to get a new speaker. That could be a whole nother hour-long podcast talking about the process to pick a new speaker. And all the weird polarization that occurred through that. But it's an interesting time to be a political science major. And I'm sure it's even more interesting time to be a political science professor. I'd like to give a special shout out to the tweet that Kevin McCarthy posted the night before he was removed from the speakership. He tweeted, and I quote, "Bring it on. Well, Mr. McCarthy, it was in fact brought on."